So I'd like to speak today about a hot topic called spiritual bypassing that's been coming up a lot during the pandemic as a hot word that describes when people use a spiritual platform to bypass something that is perceived as important or real, such as, for example, if somebody gets ill and they don't go to the hospital and they're gravely ill and they want to utilize their spiritual background to help heal themselves from that. So that's just a little example of some of the ways that people are using that word and trying to integrate it as a word that is truth, that has truth. So from the perspective of the shaman, we look at life in a multidimensional way. And when we have a belief system, so a mode that we look at life through, like a lens, then we start to act in a certain way that supports that belief system, and we promote that belief system as well. So for many spiritual seekers, mystics, shamans, healers, etc., we can sometimes get a label of the spiritual bypassing because of our belief system, because of what we believe in. So a couple of things about that. One is that the label of spiritual bypassing becomes a judgment, and it becomes a way that the person using that term is able to inflate their own belief system as being the real thing. So in essence, it's sort of the other side, the polar opposite of what they're trying to denounce. So since it's part of a dualistic relationship, it doesn't exist in the realm of truth. It becomes a loop. So because we exert a belief about spiritual bypassing, then therefore we will create and manifest and see spiritual bypassing happening. So that's one thing about the word. So it becomes a judgment. So number two, there's a misunderstanding or perhaps an incomplete understanding about the nature of reality and manifestation and the power that our belief systems have. So for example, I'm thinking of any spiritual tradition, any religion, any way of life that everyone is operating under their own system of living. Even if they're part of a group, they have a unique expression of that. And so that means that they are the ones who create their life. They are the ones who create their reality, who make choices for themselves. So if we understand that completely and wholeheartedly, then we trust the decisions that another person makes for themselves based in their belief system. So in that sense, there becomes no need to exert the term spiritual bypassing. If somebody is making a choice, it is their right to be able to make a choice for themselves. When we look at someone through the eyes of the judgment of spiritual bypassing doesn't mean that something isn't happening. It is an outsider's take on somebody's internal world. For example, I'm a shaman, and I look through and look at the natural world and creation through a certain lens, shaped by my unique experiences, shaped by the teachings that I've received, and my teachers, and the people that I've come into contact with, and the experiences that I've had. And therefore, I make decisions based on that. And it's neither good nor bad. It is unique and it is special to me, just as it is for everyone else. And if that means it puts myself at a certain risk or a certain safety, then that is my choice. However, it doesn't affect you in the same way that you're thinking. The part about a person's choice affecting the greater whole is of course true. We know that. We know that we are 100% interconnected with all of life. However, we cannot intervene in the way someone else is expressing their uniqueness, expressing their beliefs. So as soon as we start to intervene in that by the judgment of spiritual bypassing, that's when we start to muck it up for ourselves. So we get into, I'm thinking of the COVID and how there's a lot of languaging around how people are spiritual bypassing the seriousness of this, whether it be with masks or whether it be with socially distancing, isolating, all that sort of thing, is that we forget that yes, we are a culture, we are together as a people, as humans on this earth, yet individually we also have a certain magnetism and a certain way that we attract things and manifest things according to our belief system. Right now, in all of your lives, you have manifested exactly what is in front of you because of your belief system. And because you feed those belief systems in every single second of your day, what is in front of you is what happens. So, for example, if someone develops a fear towards something, they have a very strong emotional connection to that fear. And therefore, since it is a strong connection, it is an attachment, it will create more and more fear. And it will also draw experiences that in which the individual can create a stronger fear. So this is how powerful we are as manifestors of our own reality. And when we put a judgment on others' expression of reality in one way or another, if we look at it through good or the bad lens, then that is the point that is the entrapment. It's not the actual choice or what the other is doing. It's not the good or the bad thing. It's that charge that somehow I need to control this. I need to say something about this. I need to intervene in other people's lives. That gives a false sense of control, a false sense of manifestation, because that's not how it works. The multidimensionality of our reality is the place that the shamans understand, is when they go into the invisible they see very clearly all over the world, all the shamans, all the healers, people who work in multiple realms, multiple dimensions, see very clearly how everything is interconnected and that everything has a place. The light and the dark is part of this nature of Earth, and how every dimension is a choice, and we choose willingly to belong to those dimensions, whether it's pain and suffering, whether it's joy and happiness. Those are all things and dimensions, you can look at it that way, where we make a choice to live in those places. And so when a person chooses to impose their dimension, what they believe, what they are, what's fundamental for them, onto another in any context, this is where we insert pain into those dimensions. The people who are being looked upon as spiritual bypassing, it has no relevance to the other, the person who is judging. So that's a point to examine. And there's another point where when we choose that phrase of spiritual bypassing, it negates the uniqueness and the specialness of the other. So it has nothing to do with doing things for the greater good, actually, because when we pronounce that judgment on others, it detracts not only from the other's mandala, if you can imagine someone like a mandala, but it also detracts from the speaker, the one who has the judgment. Disease and how it manifests in everyone is a unique thing. Disease, how it is spread, is a unique thing to each disease. And what gets lost in this, and has gotten lost in the pandemic, is that the diseases of Earth are also unique and necessary. And they also evolve, and we evolve with them, just as all of the creatures do. All of life does. And that we can look at disease as a learning opportunity, as all disease is presented to connect us to our spirit that we forget, that we go away from because we don't know about it, or we don't have reference, or we don't have the pathway of how to connect to the spirit, and why the spirit would want to know about disease, and why the spirit requests certain diseases, because it will essentially put us in contact with parts of ourselves that need it. Like when somebody conquers a disease, for example, and they feel like a hero for doing that, that is something that they needed in their soul journey to come here to realize or become aware of. And that is a belief system that many hold, and it is neither right nor wrong. And in that belief system, and if we understand and have compassion and welcoming to others' stances, then you can feel for your own self that what the others believe is inconsequential. It's the only world that is the most powerful world to invest in is the one that's within you. And when that becomes a focus, the focus on the external starts to shift, because we realize truly that we are the creators of our own world. And there are multiple dimensions and multiple worlds going on. You create in your world, I create in my world, they create in their worlds, and all those multiple dimensions, multiple realities are all happening at the same time. And somehow they all go together, and it doesn't require our input into the other's world to be so. So from the stance of the mystic, all of the perspectives are welcome. That's why when I working with people and working with groups, say everything is welcome. Every perspective is welcome. Everyone is welcome with their uniqueness. And there's no room for judgment in that. Because as soon as we step into judgment, we're in the dualistic nature. And we are looping continuously in that dualistic nature until we take a step out of it by observation and by our awareness. What people will manifest as a result of their belief systems is their business, essentially. And it has no effect on you. The effect that is perceived is false. It engages the sentimentality, and it engages emotionality, and takes us out of the neutral mind, where we can see most clearly, and see most accurately, and most deeply. When we choose the path of understanding and choose the path of compassion, this has a much more deeper effect and widespread effect. Choosing to understand why perhaps another has a different belief system and seeing that in a neutral way, in a new way. This is where we will benefit each other the most as we go through this, as we go through these experiences of challenge. So sometimes leaders or those who teach spiritual teachings become a target for such things. And often the accusations of spiritual bypassing come from a space that doesn't quite have the complete understanding of the teachings and where the teachings are coming from. The masters have a multidimensional understanding of life that is not based on one particular philosophy or belief. In fact, there's usually a grand and all-encompassing holistic view that is in place from the sight of the master. And from that place, they can see that everyone is going to manifest what it is that they're going to manifest according to their capacity, according to their orientation, according to their willingness, etc. So under that guise, everyone is their own leader as well, even though there may be a teacher or a master of a certain tradition. So everyone is also their own guide and leader. And therefore everyone makes their own choices. That's the thing about being sovereign, or about on the path to sovereignty and freedom, is that we realize that we are the creator, and that we are 100% responsible for ourselves. So when somebody has a certain belief and they want to exercise that over their own life, and they do, it is a great disservice to discredit that. What the person experiences, whether they get sick because of it, whether they fall ill, whether they make somebody else ill, whether they injure themselves or injure somebody, this is part of the individual's journey and the individual's experience and expression of their passion, essentially. So how is it that we think so much of ourselves to exert any kind of control over the other in their unique expression of spirit? It doesn't matter where it leads them, that's for them to figure out. And again, we have to keep in mind the neutral mind here, because we will tend to put things into good or bad. Oh, I like this, I dislike this. However, if you're on the path of mastery, we abandon that. We abandon the idea of the dual nature in order to see the truth, in order to see the neutral playing field that we are all essentially on, where nothing is good nor bad. And it's a great school, a great learning environment for us. So instead of placing the judgment of their spiritual bypassing, get curious. Find out more about it. Find out more about your own belief system. Find out more about why you feel you need to exert that control over somebody else's life. That is the more interesting part of this that you can take away. And that's where we'll end today, with a little more compassion and understanding in the heart.